Welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast, the #1 show to bring you all things Club América in English, from tactical analysis
Pelota para la banda izquierda.
to player updates. We've got you covered on all the latest news on Las Águilas. Now, let's start the show. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eagle Eye Podcast. Today, we're going to be breaking down Las Águilas de América poor start to this League's Cup campaign. We'll break down RSL, the 90 minutes that happened then, and then, of course, the penalty shootout that ended up in a loss. We'll talk about Minnesota United, and we'll talk about that chaotic matchup that ended up 3-3, with ultimately América winning on penalties. And then, of course, we'll break down the game against Portland Timbers. We have an expert coming on later on in that segment, so we'll get you guys all covered in that aspect. What does América need in order to advance into the next phase of the League's Cup? Are all hopes lost after a couple results? But we'll see. We'll break it all down just a little bit in a moment. And then, of course, we'll talk about the big breaking news in the transfer window. The Frenchman, the 28-year-old winger, Allan Saint-Maximin, is coming to Las Águilas de América. And we'll give you guys our thoughts on what we think is going to happen with the rest of the transfer window, as it seems like Las Águilas are not done with all of that. And yeah, so much to cover, so much to talk about in this episode, and so little time to do so, I guess. It's only going to be me for the first segment as I break down RSL, Minnesota, talk a little bit about the transfer rumors, and then, of course, we'll break over into the second segment, which is going to be with the Portland Timbers expert, Adam. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode. I think there's a lot to break down. There's a lot to talk about. And without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So, Las Águilas de América started off their League's Cup campaign in probably the worst fashion possible for Las Águilas de América. I know that there were other teams out there that lost their first game 7-0, but we are not those teams, right? We are Las Águilas de América. We are expected to perform and do much better than any other team across the board, whether it's Liga MX, whether it's MLS. We were always expected to have a much better start, a much better League's Cup in general. And America just, I don't know what it is. I don't know if they've crumbled against all the pressure. The squad just doesn't seem to be 100% convinced. We've talked about in other podcasts the way that, you know, this team looks whenever they concede goals. They're very sloppy. They're having lapses of misconcentration, that they completely just underhelms the squad in general, and it feels, I don't know, it feels like you're looking into a squad that really has no faith within themselves to get themselves out of this rut. And honestly, it's hard to pinpoint how you can walk out of this situation, right? It's gonna be one of those things where you're gonna have to play through it, but you also have to find a way to make subtle changes here and there in order to kind of make sure that this team ultimately comes out of the other side a much better team, rather than, you know, the opposite way, and where this team just completely falls apart midway through the season. And of course, that's all going to fall upon Jardine, his coaching staff, and the players as well. Is there that conviction to want to progress, to want to be better, to, you know, everybody in life goes through these moments, right, where you're in a bit of a rut, and it's ultimately up to you to want to get out of these situations on your own in that sense. And so it'll be interesting to see how this America side can play through these lapses of, you know, of dips of not being able to play well. So we'll see exactly what the case is, but let's not talk about too much about the future. We haven't seen exactly how that happens. Let's talk about what we do know, and that is these past couple of games, and where America has showcased that everything and anything that could go wrong is going wrong for Las Águilas de América. So I mean, let's talk about this RSL game, right? A lot of expectation coming into this game was that América was going to come in, dominate, get goals, and get the 3 points. But that just wasn't the case, right? It just didn't seem to happen. The way that this game unfolded, RSL started off great. América found a way to kind of neutralize it, get back the ball, and kind of do their thing. Of course, defensive mistakes by Israel Reyes, ultimately leading up to a goal in which a lot of questions were asked as to who to blame. Obviously, Israel Reyes was the main culprit because of his mistake. And then you start to look at, you know, Malagon. Could he have done more? Should he have done more? The defense in Cáceres and Igor Lichnowsky, you know, you want to start distributing a little bit of the responsibilities on who's to blame for that one. I say majority goes to Israel Reyes. Malagon, I think, could do a little bit better. And then after that, You can pick and choose whoever you want to, but at that point, it didn't really matter because America was down 1 goal. And, the response wasn't completely terrible from Águilas del América after going down a goal, but you did see that there was this sense of like, here we go again type of scenario, right? Where I know as the fans, we felt that through the screen, but you could see it on the pitch. You could see it on the players that they felt like, okay, here we are once again, kind of in these moments in where we shouldn't be making these mistakes. We shouldn't be doing these type of errors. Ultimately, now we're paying the consequences for it. And yeah, this was just an America side that had very little flair, very little punch. And in those little instances that they were able to create something, right, we weren't being as consistent. And then, of course, luckily enough, we were able to get a goal back. And it looked like, obviously, that this game was going to be going back America's way, right? The Brian Rodriguez goal was phenomenal, right? Carlos Reynoso always talks about that he has this in his locker room every game, every match that America gets a free kick. But Brian always tends to, never really hit it on mark. And this time, lo and behold, he did. He did a phenomenal job. And look, I don't want to discredit America, and I don't want to say that we didn't have our chances and that we didn't knock on the door the way that we should be. And the RSL goalkeeper was having a phenomenal night, right? And we kind of knew going into this one after talking to the guys from the RSL Random Fan podcast that, he was an outstanding goalkeeper, that he's having a stellar season and that he was potentially going to be continuing to carry the team in that sense. And so he absolutely did what he had to do. America just needed to be a little bit sharper in their finishing, and they weren't. So it was unfortunate to see just mistake after mistake in the defensive side, right? Israel Reyes, I think, had his worst night in an America jersey, giving up 2 goals potentially easily. Want to say that, he was at fault for 2 of those goals. And then obviously afterwards, America able to claw one back and get a goal in. But it just, I don't know, it felt frustrating watching this game because you felt like there was no response, there was no answer, there was no one that could come off the bench and be that difference maker for America. It was always kind of like, is RSL going to fall asleep at the wheel and we're going to take advantage of it, rather than are we going to be able to, force another goal back in? And it felt like we were at the mercy of RSL. And I mean, I just don't feel like that's how America plays. That's how America hasn't played like that in years. And so in order to feel like that, it's I guess an indicator of what's been going on these past couple of months for America. But luckily enough, they were able to find that equalizer, and America was then sent over to PKs. And so we knew that America, in order to get themselves in a good position to qualify to the next phase of the Leagues Cup, we knew 3 points were important right off the get-go. And you don't lose, but you do get an opportunity to get an extra point, right? 2 points is better than 1 point, better than no points. And I know that you weren't going to be able to walk away with all 3, but it's still something to kind of bolster your hopes of eventually qualifying into the next phase. And so America went up, took some absolutely terrible penalties. RSL did their job, and America ended up losing the penalty shootout. Again, unfortunate that America continues to give us these moments, these phases. It feels like it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, right? They just can't escape this kind of dip in form, right? This rut that they're in. And I mean, it was evident against RSL, and even more so against Minnesota, that this America side needs something. I'm not asking for a miracle here, because I don't think we need a miracle to get out of this situation, but I do think this America side needs something more to hold on, and we'll see what that something more is. And hopefully it's coming in these next couple of games, right? Not only do we have Portland, but then we have to start focusing on the league. And honestly, with the way that America's been playing, I don't feel confident to say on the podcast right now that America is easily going to walk over Querétaro, that we're going to get 3 points at home. It doesn't even feel like that right now. It feels like it can go either or. And you don't want to be feeling like that, especially so early on into the season. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that was the matchup against RSL. Minnesota was a different game, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more, I guess just, I don't even know, have the perfect adjective to describe this game, but it was just a conundrum, if anything. America again starting off very, very poorly. Defensively, we are looking just terrible. I know that a lot of people have been questioning Igor Lichnowsky and as to why he's starting over the likes of Ramon Juarez, who I agree is potentially much, much better defender right now than Igor Lichnowsky is, except in aerial battles. I think Igor Lichnowsky has everyone beat flat out. And it's because of his height and just because how well he reads the aerial the aerial duel that I think he has one leg up against every other center back in America. And I think Jardine only trusts in Igor Lichnowsky to get the job done in that aspect. So that is probably the only reason why you don't see a Ramon Juarez starting against Minnesota United. And maybe will we get a Ramon Juarez against Portland Timber? Maybe, but probably not. Especially with, America's Achilles heel continuing to be this dead ball situation, continuing to be these aerial duels. I think we're going to see Igor Lichnowsky start again. And he did not have his best of games. Actually, excuse me, sorry. He got a red card. Completely just had a brain fart there. So, yeah, we'll see Ramon Juarez. Hopefully he can take advantage of that. But Igor Lichnowsky looked terrible. Israel Reyes looked horrible in that first goal against Minnesota United. How do you get split like that and get bodied like that? It's just unacceptable, right? Especially from a starting center back at Las Águilas del América. Absolutely should not be happening whatsoever. But yeah, it did. Malagon came out, wasn't able to do much afterwards, and América saw themselves trailing once again in a matchup in where, again, you said very much needed game. I know we didn't podcast, and I know we weren't able to kind of talk to you guys about our thoughts in regards to Minnesota United, but I think we were all on the same boat that, hey, America needs to win regardless this game against Minnesota. And in such an important matchup, you see them trailing the way that they were and the way that they started off playing. You're just thinking, oh boy, here we go again, And that was just the thing that you absolutely hated, You didn't want to see something like that happen. And now again, trailing, having to fight that, find that fighting spirit to be like, hey, we're going to come out, we're going to ball out, and we're going to get the result. It just never seemed like it was going to happen, And America continued to knock on the door. And that's not something that I think any of us are criticizing. I think it's just the fact that we do knock on the door, but we aren't doing it the precise way. We aren't finishing. We aren't clinical. We're short of ideas whenever we do start missing chance after chance. And again, it just goes to show that we're not in a situation, we're not in a position where we want to be. Obviously, we get that own goal, which was a little bit crazy that Minnesota conceded the way that they did. 1-1, you feel like, okay, game's back on, find a way to get this going. And again, it's just America making mistakes time and time again in the defensive area that you're just thinking, how do we have no defensive solidarity? This is a defensive team. Well, this is a team that we praised so much in the past couple of years for being one of the best defenses in the league, right? Defensively speaking, you had players that just were winning tackles. They were getting first to these 50-50 balls. You felt a little sense of security, right? I mean, we've never, on the podcast at least, we've never over-glorified these defenders. I think we've never actually felt the safest with them, especially with Cáceres. You never really knew when he was going to give you one of those Cáceres moments. Aside from that, no one else was giving you these kind of security, right? We criticized and questioned Borja so much whenever he was in his first spell with Las Águilas del América. Kevin Alvarez now is being put in the hot seat because of his performances or lack of performance. Israel Reyes, unfortunately, is not having the best of moments right now as well. Something's going on in America. Something's going on in this defense that I can't put my finger to it, but something is going on that is really clouding the heads of some of these players. And you're just thinking, why are you making these type of, silly little mistakes in moments in where you should 100% be focused, 100% be determined that you're going to be playing this ball, that you're going to be making this movement, but you're not. You're looking very much like a Sunday league player rather than an out-and-out professional soccer player that looks to want to play a World Cup for the upcoming World Cup with their national team. A lot of these players have an opportunity to play for the national team next year, and it's a World Cup year, and so we know that it's important for them to showcase and show that they're solid. Right now, none of these America players are even close to getting into that starting 11 sheet for the Mexican national team, let alone some of these foreigners who have an opportunity to potentially play for their respective national teams. So, I mean, it's frustrating all around, right? Again, America is able to claw themselves back up, make it 2-2, and then right after Igor Lichnowsky gets a red card, we concede again. Very foolish, very poor. Malagon needs to be doing better in those situations whenever that ball gets shot, and he needs to dive a little bit quicker and get lower, faster. But, I mean, once it was 3-2, you felt like, okay, our chances here are completely out of the window. And I guess this is the only turning point where we can say, okay, there's a glimmer of hope that there is a much better America side to be seen within the next couple of weeks, is the fact that after that 3-2, I think a lot of us would have not even batted an eye if America would just kind of let the result play itself out. But they ultimately came back. They fought. They got that 3-3. They could potentially have won it 4-3, but then again, they could have potentially have lost it too if it wasn't for that phenomenal save from Malagon at the end. But there was glimmer of hope that, hey, this America side can crawl themselves back up and get back into a good position, right? And there were some substitutions that were made that I think, should have started from the get-go. I don't know why Davila's still playing for us. I don't understand how he even was a contender to potentially play in this game, and he even started. Brian Rodriguez, I think, should have, from the moment, started this matchup. I don't think there's anybody better right now than him in that position. Yolanta, I think, is coming up and looking and showcasing that he can potentially be a really, really good player for us. I feel like we need to give more time to Zúñiga. I know that he's had his moments where he could have potentially put the ball into the back of the net, hasn't done so. Looks a little bit shaky here and there, but I think he could potentially be a good answer for us. I mean, look, everyone loves Buffalo Gator for what he did last season, especially with that, quarterfinals against Toluca. But right now, I think he's not really showcasing that he's América quality for the long run. I mean, that opportunity he had was absolutely golden, and you feel like somebody else on their night would have put that away and potentially would have been a 4-3 result. And I mean, imagine if the game ends 4-3. We're having a much different conversation. We're having a much different feeling, and we're actually over the moon, right? But I don't know. It feels like the América side is going through something at the moment, and they need to figure it out, but they need to figure it out quick because there's not much time here, right? And look, all hope is not lost after the result against Minnesota United. I know we end up going to penalties. We have a good job. We do phenomenal with the penalties. Not one single miss. And then, of course, Malagon saves one in the sudden death round. But I think that this América side needs to find a way to kind of rally themselves up. And this Portland game is going to be very important, very, very, very important as far as not just for the Leagues Cup campaign, but also for the fact that the rest of the season, how this potentially could go. You're going up against the best MLS side right now in the Leagues Cup, aside from Seattle Sounders, but you're going up against a very good team. You're going up against a team that hasn't conceded anything so far this Leagues Cup campaign, and that's showcased that they can score goals and that they can ride out games. So it will be important that if America can get a victory against Portland, that it'll be a good standing point where they can be like, okay, we have a good showcasing. We're going to be in a good situation. We'll just go and see it out from there. Other than that, I mean, it was just frustrating to watch both Wednesday and Saturday, and where America just showcased that, hey, we're still not where we want to be, right? And there's so much that we can potentially talk about and that we could potentially, point fingers at and be like, hey, this person should be doing better than that. But at the end of the day, it's a collective, it's a collective sport, meaning that everyone has to put their part. Everyone has to do their part. And so I think that this is an America side that needs to kind of just grind it out. I know that there is talk about their turmoil between some of these players. Is the locker room a little bit broken? There isn't that sense of brotherhood like there was beforehand. What is going on? Questions being asked left, right, and center. But I do think that we will get an answer soon as to whether or not this America side is willing and capable of kind of getting themselves out of this rut, and hopefully they can. But as things stand right now in Leagues Cup, America has a total of 3 points. 2 coming off the victory against Minnesota United in that penalty shootout, 1 coming off the draw against Real Salt Lake, and America's chances are literally slim. Not impossible, but very much slim. So they do need to go up against Portland. They need to win by a big margin. They need to rely on a couple results, and we'll see what happens. But again, America showcasing that things with MLS teams are just not the way that they want them to be. But we'll see what happens. But that is this segment so far. The start of League Cups has not been what any of us have hoped for or intended, and we'll see if America can make the comeback against the Portland Timbers. All right, coming up, we'll be talking transfer news. We'll be talking about that big bombazo, the French winger coming to Las Águilas del América, and then of course we'll be talking America versus Portland Timbers to close out this Leagues Cup campaign. Will America be able to make it to the next round? We'll have to wait and see. Americanistas, today's episode is brought to you by Tom's Watch Bar, the official home of Club América in the United States. Every game this season will be streamed at Tom's Watch Bar. That's right, all the games, all the time, meaning you'll always have a place to catch our Águilas in action. So make sure to head over to your local Tom's Watch Bar to experience an América game like never before. Visit tomswatchbar.com/events for more information. Thank you to Tom's for sponsoring today's episode. All right, Americanistas, let's talk transfer rumors, transfer news. What's going on in the world of Las Águilas del América in this sense? Last week, we spoke about don't get your hopes up about Boanga coming. And hey, lo and behold, flat out fell apart. Bonga's not coming. But nobody, and I mean nobody, was expecting the turn of events that was América signing Allan Saint-Maximin. I mean, a phenomenal signing. I think I don't want to say a player that came out of left field because it just sounds like, you know, a player that isn't good or anything. But this is a quality signing for Las Águilas del América, and you know, kudos to the staff for making this happen, and you know, for every party involved that we were criticizing for them getting the job done in this sense. Great, phenomenal. This is awesome, but the job is not done. The job is still not done. And one signing does not make the difference in the lack of signings for the past couple of seasons, right? There's still going to be accountability as to whether or not this signing pans out. And look, all of us are holding our fingers, you know, crossing our fingers, to make sure that this signing completely just comes through. He comes in, tears the league apart, and he just does a phenomenal job in that sense. I think there still needs to be work to be done. And I think this America side is not completely done and fixed and ratified with just one signing. I think this is an America side that needs to continue to evolve, that needs improvement in areas, and we'll see what happens. So that is obviously the big news, right? Allan Saint-Maximin, the Frenchman, 28-year-old, the right side of 30, as we like to say it on the podcast. Can he be the difference maker in America's attack? Absolutely. I think he can be. I think he you know, a lot of people like to joke around on Twitter and saying that if he comes with just a fraction of the talent that he had at Newcastle, that he is potentially going to be the best player in the league. Rightfully so. I mean, you look at this man's highlights, and if you even saw some of the games that he played at, I mean, he just was phenomenal. I got to see him a couple of times whenever he played against Manchester United, and he looked great. I mean, obviously, it didn't keep up with his career after Newcastle. You know, him going off to Saudi, him going off to Turkey and all that good stuff. I know he hasn't had the best of spells, but he's still a very good, promising player that I think can come in, do a really, really, really good job, and hopefully he is he's the perfect fit for America. So yeah, the club hasn't made it official yet, but the GOAT, Merlo, has already confirmed that it is completely 100% done, and now we're just waiting for the team to completely confirm it and put it on their socials. With that said, though, there is still a couple more signings to be made, or at least that is what a lot of reporters are saying out there, that America is not 100% done, that they're not happy with some of the results, with some of the performances, and that they are willing to splash a little bit more cash to get a couple more players into the team, right? We obviously know that America is desperately in need of a center defensive mid. Jonathan Santos' replacement is needed ASAP, and whether or not that's going to be Guido Rodriguez, someone we talked about, who has had links with returning back to Las Águilas del América. The Necaxa player, which again, I'm going to butcher his name, Alan Palavecino, could potentially be in line for Las Águilas del América as well. I know a player that a lot of us would be very much excited to get if that actually comes to fruition. But right now, things are not easy to bring in another foreigner, right? You don't have an extra slot. You need to get rid of another foreigner. And a lot of questions are surrounding Davila, his future. Brian Rodriguez continues to have temptations from Asia, from Qatar. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? We don't know yet. I think losing Brian would be bad. I think we need him. But we'll see. Like we said, this is a crazy transfer window. This is going to be a long transfer window. It doesn't end until September. We still have a whole month to go before this transfer window ends. And I think we have more than enough time to see this all out. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, at least we have confirmation about one big name coming into Las Águilas del América. I wouldn't expect two big names, but hey, crazier things have happened in the time that we have covered America. So let's see what comes to fruition. Is America gonna get Guido Rodriguez? Are they gonna get Alan from Necaxa? We'll see. We don't know yet, but we'll keep you guys up to date with everything going on in the world of Las Águilas del América. Make sure you guys follow us over on Twitter at Eagle Eye Podcast, Instagram, TikTok as well with the same handle, and we'll keep you guys up to date with everything going on in the world of Las Águilas del América and the transfer window. With that said, I think that's all I have in regards to the transfer window. I don't really have anything else concrete in that sense. A lot of rumors, a lot of echoes, but we'll see what happens, right? But time to rejoice, time to cheer on the fact that we got this big name. Again, hopefully he pans out. Hopefully he goes and tears this league up apart and gives us nothing but good vibes and a good feeling overall. With that said, let's move on into our next segment as we talk Portland Timbers, Leagues Cup, and all of that good stuff. Will this be America's last game? We'll have to wait and find out. And that's coming up in the next segment. So without further ado, let's talk Leagues Cup. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk Leagues Cup now for Las Águilas del América. Portland versus Las Águilas del América. This is going to be the last matchup for our Águilas, and might be the last matchup for Leagues Cup. We'll talk about what results maybe need to happen in order for America to favor going into the next phase, but it all depends on making sure that we get 3 points out of this one. And to properly talk about the Portland Timbers, we brought on a very special guest, an expert on all things Timbers. It is Adam Susman from the Timber Review podcast. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on to the podcast.
My pleasure. It seems like you're already saying this is going to be Club América's last game. I'll take that as a Portland Timbers broadcaster and somebody who covers the team. But yeah, I was talking about it today. I think this is, in terms of the amount of eyeballs that will be watching, this is probably the Portland Timbers' biggest match since they made MLS Cup in 2021.
Really? Well, I mean, it is a high-stake game, mostly just for us. You guys seem to be coasting by, just cruising in phenomenal form, right? You guys have scored 4 against, who was it?
San Luis.
Was it San Luis? Yeah, 4 against San Luis, 1 against Querétaro. And now I'm sure you guys are eyeing to hopefully spoil the party for Las Águilas del América. But
yeah, I would say the San Luis result 4-0 is a little bit flattering to the Timbers. That was a game in which the Timbers scored 36 seconds into the match. That's the quickest they've scored a goal this year. And then it was all San Luis for the remainder of the first half. And I think with Liga MX only being 3 matches into their season, the stamina aspect kind of caught up to San Luis, and then once they got their second, it was done for, and then they tacked on 2 more at the end. And Querétaro, I'm sure your fans know better than mine, it was just such a uneventful and unentertaining game to watch going up against Querétaro. I know they're your next league match in league play, so good luck with that. It was not the most entertaining of matches.
Well, whenever you go up against those teams, you know, we like to say it's going to go 2 ways. It's either going to be a very entertaining, goal-thrilling matchup and where it's very much one-sided, or it's going to be Querétaro finding a way to make life a little bit difficult, and it's a very, very dull matchup where you maybe get a goal at most. And you guys got the latter of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Christian Paredes, a former, very brief Club América player back from 2017 to 20. And he's somebody that's sort of been a rotation midfielder this year, but he's heating up at the right time. In his last 2 starts, he's got 2 game-winning goals, each off a corner. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him face his former side and get the start on Wednesday.
Well, I'm sure he'll be itching to try to score on us as well. His time at América, a lot of Americans will remember, it was not the best. He was painted to be a much, much better midfielder than we actually got. But hey, these things happen, right? Not everyone works out at their clubs. But let's jump right into this and let's talk about what we can expect from this game. I mean, from an America perspective, I want to say that we're gonna expect a very driven and very, very attacking America side from the get-go. They know that not only do they need to win, but they need to put goals on the board. And this is not going to be an easy matchup to do so. I mean, you guys have done very well so far in this Leagues Cup campaign to not concede anything. I think you guys are going to want to hold on to that throne as much as possible. And I know you guys have probably studied how to make life difficult for America. If it's not just been these past 2 Leagues Cup games, but if you look back at the previous 4 matches that America has played, as long as you play a very good defensive, tactic where you're very much tactically organized, you're in a good shape, and you have a low block, you're going to make life a little bit difficult for America. Do you see Portland maybe kind of adapting something like that?
Yeah, I do. For really the entirety of July, I think it's now 5 of their last 6 games, they've played a 3 at the back formation, which is uncharacteristic for Timbers head coach Phil Neville. They always say, along with the general manager of the team, that this is a roster built for the 4-2-3-1. But with our star winger, Anthony, who is finally coming back from a hamstring injury, I believe actually for this Club América game, out for 2 months, the team has switched to a 3 at the back formation, and it has massively helped things defensively. A name I want your fan base to watch out for. Finn Sermon is a 21-year-old center back for the Timbers. He is 6'3", 6'4", fast as can be, and I truly believe he's going to be playing in a top 4 European league in a year or 2 time. And he, I think by far, despite only being 21 years old, is the Timbers' best defender. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to stop this high-powered Club América attack.
Well, it'll be interesting. I'll tell you this much. The aerial duel is probably not our most strongest form of attack, but I do expect us to be playing a little bit more down the wing, trying to open up channels. Whether or not Henry Martin starts this game, which I'm assuming he will, he'll be important for the build-up play. But I'll be interested to see. I mean, right now we're in desperate need of help in the defensive side of things, so we're always keeping an eye for a good defender. So it'll be interesting to see how this Portland team can handle our attack. But talk to me a little bit more about your guys' Leagues Cup ambition. I mean, you guys are already coming into this game, obviously 2 games under your belt. But how important is this Leagues Cup campaign for Portland?
It's always tricky for Major League Soccer sides because in 2023 and 24, unlike Liga MX, where Leagues Cup is at the start of your season, you could almost treat it as an exaggerated preseason. For MLS sides, it comes at sort of a bad time because it's during the transfer window and there's only 10 or 9 games left in your season, depending on who you are. So a lot of teams, at least their fan base, if you put truth serum in them, they sort of want to punt on the competition. But this year for the Timbers, that has not been the case. They've played rather strong lineups against San Luis, with Querétaro not being the best of teams. They were allowed to rotate in that game. And they're at a time where they're finally getting their top players back from injury. All of them besides Jonathan Rodriguez, the former Club América winger who was unfortunately out for the season with a knee issue. Hopefully he's back and ready to go in 2026. But with the revamped format, CONCACAF Champions League to somebody like Club América is sort of a right. They're there every single season. For the Portland Timbers, that is not the case. We have not played in that tournament since we faced you in 2021 and lost 4-2 on aggregate. So it feels like the Timbers, along with the remaining MLS teams, have a much easier chance of getting to CONCACAF Champions League through Leagues Cup than you do through MLS. And that's something that I think every team in North America should be striving to get, because that is the premier competition. So if you're a Timbers fan or a Club América fan, look at it this way. Portland is 3 wins away from being in CCL, something they have not been in for 4 years and counting. So I think starting with the Club América match and then hopefully a quarterfinal and a semifinal, it will be their strongest 11 from here on out, and they'll have to rotate in the league matches instead of the Leagues Cup matches.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I see the importance of making a deep run in this type of competition. A lot of Americanistas are on the fence of how they feel about this competition itself, because as far as for us, our sake, we've already secured our spot into the CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? Especially after the wonderful 2 years we've had with consistent title after title. So we're very much already in that. We're already seated there. But for me, the big thing is that this is a competition where America can showcase that they are still this big, massive team that can do it outside of Mexico. We've struggled so much with MLS teams in these past couple of years that I feel like this is the moment in where we could have showcased something better. And right now we haven't, right? Terrible display against RSL. I mean, a great comeback against Minnesota where we almost nicked it at the end. But it's just not the same America that we've had these past couple of seasons that I think worries a lot of people. And a lot of people will just say this is a glorified preseason. Let's just focus back onto the league. And whilst, yes, that would be great, I do think that there will be a lot of weight carried about how these results impact this team going forward. I think this is why if you go out there, get a victory against Portland, get 3 points, maybe even a couple results go your way and you're able to go into the next phase, it'll just boost that morale going into the season, and where we know the main objective is, of course, the league title. But yeah, it's interesting. You guys are in a very good position right now. Do you think that you guys will take this game maybe just a little bit less nonchalant, in the sense where you're not going to be putting up all your heavy hitters, or is this game a very much must-win matchup for you guys?
I don't think it's either. I don't think it's a must-win because I think the Timbers can get through if this game gets the penalty kick. Some of the results in Leagues Cup in the last couple of days have helped out the Timbers in terms of the teams behind them. Like, they've taken 6 points from 6. I think you can get through with 7 or 8 points. But I also don't think it's as lenient as you initially said. I do think the Timbers are going to take this game awfully seriously because it is Club América. Phil Neville said today, everybody wants to play in this match. Anthony, our star winger, who was actually very lightly rumored to Club América when he was healthy, he was mad that he wasn't allowed to play in the Querétaro match coming back from a hamstring injury. And I think the way they sort of reasoned that with them was, hey, you'll play against Club América instead. And also there's a new DP winger in which the Timbers just signed today, Christophe Velde, coming over from, Olympiakos in Greece. He will not be ready for this match, obviously, unfortunately, but I do think it sort of motivates the current Timber forwards to start firing, because if they don't, they know there's a new DP who's going to be here in a week's time to take their spot. And I'm specifically looking at somebody like Santiago Moreno, who has been the interest of many clubs in South America this window.
Interesting. Well, we'll see exactly what we get from Portland. My question to you now is, in order for Portland to get all 3 points, how do you see them approaching this game? How do you think, what are the keys for Portland to walk away with a victory?
Well, in this three at the back formation, they haven't faced like a high press much at all. And from what I've heard about Club América, and correct me if I'm wrong, you will press the Timbers higher up the pitch than certainly what we saw at Querétaro and likely what we saw out of San Luis as well. So the Timbers, I'm confident in Finn Sermon's ability on the ball not to be pressured by that. But against Kamal Miller and Jimmer Forey, our other two center backs that will likely start in the three at the back formation, they have to be sure not to give away sloppy passes. Because I trust the Timbers' defensive ability in a low block when, they're just kind of conceding possession. But you cannot be caught in the press. And after that, the Timbers, when they were scoring a lot of goals in the first 2 or 3 months of the season, they were doing it within transition. This is probably, at least since I started covering the team in 2021, certainly the fastest version of the Portland Timbers we've had. And I think when you're facing a physical side like Club América, I know you guys aren't the tallest, but I was talking to a Timbers assistant coach today, and they said, while Club América is not the tallest, they are certainly one of the more physical sides in which the Timbers will face this year. So I think if Portland can get out in transition and not be sloppy when they're within possession and Club América is pressing them, that can be the key to success. And David Acosta, who is our sort of star number 10, a replacement for Evander, who went to Cincinnati in the offseason, if he can have a good game, he does really well in tight spaces. It's not a like-for-like comparison, but he's a little bit similar to Zendejas in the sense that if he has some time on the ball and he has time to think about it, like he's going to make the best read. I'm really excited for him because he's still waiting for that moment where the fan base like truly accepts him as the centerpiece of the Portland Timbers. And if he can have a big goal or a big assist in a match against Club América, that could be his moment.
Interesting. I'm glad you brought up Sendejas because I think that's going to be the player that needs to be the difference maker for us, right? Our new now number 10, he's going to be important. And you're right. We are going to press you guys a little bit more higher up on the pitch, especially in such a high-stake game for America. We want the ball. We're a team that heavily wants to dictate play, and we want to be the ones in control of majority of the possession. It's just what we do with the ball, I think, is going to be the most important part. This is America's side that at times has looked a little bit just naive with the ball. Like they have no idea, no clue what to do with it once they get to the final third. Brian Rodriguez has been instrumental in making things happen, but whenever he gets shut down, it feels like the team just automatically recesses and doesn't really know what other angles to explore. Obviously, though, it helps when you have Henry Martin back onto the pitch. I think he was crucial in order to make this America side work the way that they work so fluidly. He does so well to receive the ball with his back to goal and kind of be the player that Sendejas, Brian, even Fidalgo can play off of. And we'll see, how Andre Jardine is going to kind of line up his starting 11, and tactically speaking, how is he going to try to break your guys' defensive wall down? Look, we're a quick team, and I think in transition, we're going to need to be even quicker. We're going to have to make decisions in a blink of an eye, and we saw against Minnesota how well America could explode, especially in that last moment where we could have nicked it 4-3. We just have to be clinical. I think America needs to be clinical in front of goal. We'll see how we do, and then how do you fancy your chances with your goalkeeper?
It's, for the last year and a half, it's sort of been a goalkeeper battle. It's not like Malagon for Club América, who it's obviously his number one shirt. It's been a competition between Max Crépeau and James Pantemis, both of Canada. And Crépeau has now sort of finally taken the number one shirt, though James Pantemis has gotten the last 2 games. He's only really faced, I think, probably 4 total shots on goal, and all of them were rather routine saves. And with Crépeau taking the number one shirt back in Major League Soccer play, it sort of is his game here. And I think from the start, I don't have sourcing on this, but it feels that Crépeau will get this opportunity. And, Mexico fans probably know him a little bit from his time with Canada, has been a really good goalkeeper in the Gold Cup, and he was one of the best goalkeepers at Copa América. In 2024, he stopped Messi on a one-on-one chance when Argentina played Canada. So I think he is sort of a big game goalkeeper. He won MLS Cup with LAFC a few years ago, and he's hoping to get back to that form for the Timbers as well. And I think this is the type of game to do it. He's somebody that I've talked to regularly is very good at sort of drowning out the crowd. He's formerly a Vancouver Whitecaps player, and whenever the Timbers go up and play in Vancouver, he gets a very, very loud boos. So I don't think a sea of yellow behind him is going to frustrate him too much. But if your fans going to the game do want to heckle him, he does speak good Spanish.
Well, one thing's for sure, we're going to have to test him on the night to see, obviously how well he can perform. The sea of yellow is going to be, I think, I'm assuming you guys are expecting it already, right? Majority will be maybe Club América fans. It's your guys's.
Oh, yeah.
Well, obviously you guys are coming over to Austin for this one. How does that feel, coming into this one knowing it's kind of like going against America back in 2021 and obviously it's not going to the Azteca this time, but it's going to a different stadium in where majority is going to be Club América fans.
The Timbers are not a good road team. It has been the tale of Portland since they last made MLS Cup in 2021. In 22, I think they only won 2 games on the road. In 2023 and 2024, they won 3 games on the road. They're getting slightly better at it. They've won 4 on the road this year, but it's still a record that is well below 500. So going to Texas, a state in which they have struggled a lot. For example, they play FC Dallas on Saturday, who historically is like an okay team, but Portland has won in Dallas once in 16 tries, and I'm just a little bit worried about the road aspect of this game. But I think what changes the dynamic in this one is Portland is essentially going to treat this as a knockout round game, because if they don't get a point 2 or hopefully 3, they may be knocked out of Leagues Cup, because I think it's going to take an extra point to come out of the top 4 MLS teams than it is to come out of the top 4 Liga MX teams, and Portland's going to be aware of that. And it could set up a potential semifinal or final against their biggest rivals, one of the biggest rivalries in North America, Portland versus Seattle, who are first and second of the MLS teams in Leagues Cup right now.
Yeah, that would be one crazy game. But it's all good news, I guess, on that aspect, because we'd love to be able to have something to grasp on, because obviously our form hasn't been phenomenal, but we'll see what happens. I can expect that America is going to put in their best starting 11. Obviously, we have a red card to deal with. Igor Lichnowsky will not be available, so that is something that maybe you guys will most likely try to exploit. Our aerial game has just been non-existent. Dead ball situations seems to continue to be our Achilles heels, and I'm sure that you guys have already looked into that, and I'm sure you guys are going to try to exploit that. I'll be curious to see. A lot of fans have been calling for Ramon Juarez to start. A lot of people have been asking for Ramon Juarez to be kind of the central center back to pair either with Igor Lichnowsky or with Cáceres. And this will be a big game for him. It'll be a big game to see if he can step up to the moment. He's been crucial in other big games, but at times, he can look a little bit flat-footed and like he still needs to kind of grasp the moment. He is Club América through and through from the academy. He is, a lot of people like to say the reincarnation of Alfredo Tena in that sense. But he needs to have a big game. Someone needs to have a big game in the defensive side. Malagón needs to find a way to command his box a little bit better. I need him to come out. He's a bit of he's going through a little bit of a rough patch. Ever since some of the mistakes he's made at the Gold Cup, I think have continued to haunt him. Right, with the World Cup coming up next year, and I feel like he got very complacent and thought this is my number one spot. No one's coming and getting it from me. And now, mistake after mistake, we could potentially see him maybe even lose the starting spot to either Tala Rangel or Memo Ochoa. So he needs to have a big game, needs to have a big night as well. And we'll just have to wait to see. But this paints to be a good matchup. This game is going to be at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Apple TV, of course. And I know this game also is going to be broadcasted through to the N. But just do yourself a favor. If you have MLS Season Pass, go ahead and watch this game. It's going to be in much more HD quality than TUDN. I can promise you that much. So just do with that information as you must. But yeah, game on Apple TV. We can't wait. We're excited. Adam, if you had to put a scoreline on this matchup for Wednesday, what are you going with?
I'll say 1-1 Timbers win in PKs.
One. Not music to my ears. America needs to win this game by more than 2 goals. And I honestly don't see it. I can see America winning it 2-1.
Well, what America needs to do?
Well, America needs to win.
You guys need to score the first goal. That's been a big issue.
Yeah. We've continuously been conceding. Well, as far as this Leagues Cup match goes, right? I mean, if you look at the other games that we've played, even the game that we lost against Toluca in the Campeón de Campeones, we scored first. We scored first against Tijuana. We scored first against Juarez. We scored first in, I'm missing one game, Necaxa, excuse me. So, we know how to get there. It's just for whatever reason right now, we're not in a good position, or we haven't put ourselves in good positions. I think just defensively speaking, we've made just silly mistakes, like Sunday League mistakes at this point. And you look back at Israel Reyes against RSL, like you would never expect him to make those type of mistakes. I just feel like we're in a rut, and honestly, sometimes you can't avoid it. You have to go through it. You just got to play it out, and hopefully this Portland game is a much better example of what we could potentially do and be. But I'm going 2-1 for América.
I have a question for you. So you said how Club América has kind of struggled to break down this low block. Somebody that I brought up and specifically asked Phil Neville about was Fidalgo. And he said that Fidalgo was somebody he watched at length after he left Inter Miami, and said that he was a big reason for Leagues Cup success in years past. He broadcasted the match Phil Neville did, in which Fidalgo played excellently well against St. Louis in a 4-0 win in Leagues Cup. What about Fidalgo is not necessarily cutting it in midfield to break down these low blocks, or is that not necessarily his job?
It's just, sometimes his role isn't necessarily that. I think Sendejas has been giving more of a freedom to try to be the creative player in that midfield, to try to open up defenses and open up the channels. Also, the fact that, sometimes Fidalgo finds himself in very, very deep areas of the pitch. He's the one recovering the ball and starting the play from our own half. And so he's trailing at times. He's not in those positions as he was, for example, in that game against St. Louis. In that game against St. Louis, he had Jonathan Dos Santos that was very much covering the midfield and back, and Fidalgo had all that liberty and all that freedom to go and exploit in the midfield. Him and Valdez interchanged very well, and I think right now what Fidalgo is struggling with is just, I guess, finding his footing with this new partnership within Fidalgo, Sendejas, and whoever that third center midfielder is going to be, whether it's Chiquito Sanchez, Alan Cervantes, and if it's either of those two, sometimes Fidalgo has a little bit more responsibility defensively than going forward. And I think that's what clouds him a little bit, is that he doesn't have the liberty that he once used to have. He has to carry a lot more of the responsibility from deeper within the pitch and having to carry that ball forward. But expect him to have a big game. He's instrumental. Whenever Fidalgo isn't on the pitch, you can tell. It's miles of a difference between what América can produce on the ball with Fidalgo and without. So I'm sure he will have a big game. He's an impact player. There's a reason why he's gone up the ranks, and he's even captain now for this América side. You can expect Fidalgo to have a big game, but I think it's going to be other players that are going to be more suited to breaking down this defensive side for the Portland Timbers, like a Brian Rodriguez or Sendejas.
I'll give a final interesting note for me. Omir Fernandez, who was actually on the Colorado team that beat Club América last year, grew up a big Club América fan. Both of his parents are from Mexico. I'm not sure exactly where, and he's formerly of the New York Red Bulls, and he has Mexican citizenship as well. And it's cool to see that he is a boyhood Club América fan who is now facing them for the Portland Timbers. And he's somebody that's actually started the last couple of games through rotation. I don't think he'll start this game, but he's also close and friends with Zendejas. They both came up together through the U.S. youth ranks when Zendejas was coming through the FC Dallas Academy and Omir Fernandez was coming through the New York Red Bulls Academy.
Look at that. That's awesome. Did not know that, but hey, we got an Americanista on the pitch. Hopefully he gets to enjoy his team win from the sidelines.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. But hey, look, we expect this game to still be a good one. It's going to be, has any of these leagues games disappointed? I think from a neutral perspective, you can't really go wrong.
I think this year's Leagues Cup, the format has done a lot of favors to the games, because if you lose one match outright, you're sort of eliminated from the tournament. In previous years, I think it was something like 32 of the 48 teams made it through to the knockout round. This year, it is 8 of 36. So the group stage feels a lot more important. But once you do move on, I think it's the same case in Liga MX. MLS is not pausing for a month like they used to. They're like, league play resumes. So the Timbers are going to have a very busy month of August if they make it through to the quarterfinal and beyond.
Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully this format helps kind of, bolster the Leagues Cup fame. I know a lot of fans have mixed emotions about this competition. I personally enjoy it. I don't know, do you?
I do, because it's fun to do play-by-play for teams that I don't usually get to see. I always get kind of... And the first year the Timbers were in Leagues Cup, they got to play two of the Gigantes. They played Tigres and they played Monterrey, each at Providence Park. And I've never seen such a split atmosphere at Providence Park, where it was like 50% fans rooting for Tigres and 50% rooting for the Portland Timbers. So I personally enjoyed it. I understand some of the complaints that people have overall. It kind of, intercepting the middle of the Major League Soccer season. But overall, it's just fun to have knockout-style competition games against high-end sides. And you get to see these coaches run into challenges you wouldn't otherwise in MLS play.
Absolutely. And I'm all for it as well. Hopefully, this Leagues Cup, it seems like they're here to stay. This is a competition that they've poured a lot of money into, that they want to see flourish and thrive. But, if there's anything else you want to add on, now you're free to do so.
I'm trying to think. Your starting striker for the Timbers, Felipe Mora, used to play in Liga MX. I'm not sure how successful he was against Club América. Fortunately, your former forward and Jonathan Rodriguez is out for the year, but it's a big, big boost for the Timbers to get Anthony back. He has easily been our best forward this year up until he got hurt in early June, so I doubt he starts this match. But there's a good chance that we see Anthony feature for the final 20 to 30 minutes if this game is close.
All right, well, we're looking forward to seeing what you guys have in store, and hopefully both teams come out and showcase and give us a good match of football. But with that said, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time and coming to talk to us, man.
My pleasure. Hopefully we see each other in the Champions League next year.
Absolutely. It'd be great. It'd be phenomenal. It'd be great to do this again. If you guys want to, Adam, let them know where they can find you on your socials.
Yeah, my Twitter handle is Adam_Susman. It's the same on Blue Sky as well. And if you just look up Adam Susman, SUSMAN on Google, you can generally find me. I run a Patreon as well, so if you're into the Timbers, you can look up the Timber Review Patreon, and that's the name of my podcast that we do every Tuesday and Thursday. So if you want to hear more from this match after the game on Wednesday, there'll be a podcast out on Thursday afternoon to break it all down.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely be tuning into that one to hear your guys' perspective on that game. But again, thank you so much to everyone out there. Again, make sure you guys go follow him. Great job, phenomenal job what Adam does covering the Timbers. And we can't wait to see. Hopefully, this isn't the end for America's Leagues Cup campaign. But if it is, I guess there's a lot more work to be done than we originally thought about. Again, you guys have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful day. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. Until then, come back next week to talk all things Club América. Until then, take care. And as always, Arriba la América. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another production of the Eagle Eye Podcast, the #1 source for all things Club América in English. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Eagle Eye Podcast and get all the latest news and coverage. And subscribe to our podcast wherever it is you may listen.